What's up, everyone? Welcome to week dos. I'm going to go over all of the work that is expected of you this week. I'm going to go over how it should look, and I'm going to go over tips on writing. Okay, so let's get started. Let's this is the PowerPoint I'm going to use. Okay, that I will post. It has already been posted. Okay. And so the first thing up is the assigned work for this week. If you remember the list of assignments I've given you, okay, for this week, the work that's due 1 week from today on the 24th is the story of an hour assignment and the adulterous woman assessment. Same word, really. So you need to read those two stories and answer some questions. I'm going to show you where that is. Go to lessons. We got here lesson 2, point of view, setting character development. See, 8:17 through 9:14. Click here. Okay. Here we go. We have story of an hour assignment. Here is, if you click on this, this is the story. Now, we are going to read this on Wednesday as a class. You can read it first beforehand, and then I'm going to read it, and I'm going to annotate it and go over some really important information in here, okay? Trust me, it's very important. I would recommend you watching or tuning in to the live Zoom or watching the recording of it before you go about the assignment. Your assignment is after reading the chapter titled Fiction as Genre, which is up here, okay, somewhere. After reading that, in a minimum 300 to 400 word response, address the following questions. Make sure to support your points with at least one secondary source from the library databases. Pretty much almost every activity wants you to incorporate an outside text to go along with your analysis of the story. That does not mean finding someone else's analysis of it and just copying it, but that means to find someone else's ideas that correlate to what you already believe. So the 3 questions that you're going to be focused on writing about are: what is the story's central conflict? 2, does Miss Mallard change as we might expect a protagonist to do? And 3, what are the important themes of this story? On Wednesday, we're going to read the story, I'm going to annotate it, and I'm going to talk about those things. So you might want to wait until we do that to do this assignment. Then you're also going to read The Adulterous Woman by Albert Camus. Okay? You're going to read this. All right? And you are going to pick 3 of these to answer. Okay? 3 of these to answer. So you're going to do that. Okay? And you are going to I want your work to be submitted in a Word document, okay? And all of our Word documents should always be in MLA formatting. So if you saved your first assignment, your library research assignment, you can pull that up. You can delete the library part, change the title to The Story of an Hour. By Kate Chopin. Analysis. Okay. Hit enter. Go to align left. Question 1. Okay. Question 1. Blah 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 blah. Question 2. Blah 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 blah. Question 3. Blah 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 blah. Okay. That's the way it should look with paragraphs written. Okay. Alrighty. If you have any questions about that, let me know. But all your work should be always in MLA formatting, okay? And when you're answering the adulterous woman questions, you need to, I would copy and paste. Put it all in one assignment, okay? So like when you're done with the story of an hour, scroll down in the center, The Adulterous Woman by Albert Camus analysis. 1. Put the question that you're gonna be answering, and then type your answer. Okay, that way it makes it easier so I know exactly what you are answering. 3 of these, 3 of these. It's gonna be a total of at least 600 words when you submit this document. And you can know your words by looking down here. It tells you how many words you have. Bottom left-hand corner of Word document. If you have any questions, email me. Let me know what's going on. Okay? Okay. So that's where we are. Assigned work. All right. Now, next week, I'm going to do an analysis of The Adulterous Woman. And then you are going to complete a comparison and contrast written quiz over the 2 stories. Okay? So your work this week deals with writing paragraphs. Each of your paragraphs need to be about 100 words long for this assignment. Okay? So you're essentially writing 6 paragraphs. Now, the perfect paragraph, okay? To master the paragraph is to master the essay. By you writing paragraphs to answer these questions, you are essentially writing an analytical essay. The only thing missing is the introduction and conclusion, okay? We want to make writing very comfortable for you in this class, very consistent. The more you do it, the better you'll be, okay? And essays are receive the highest grade, or the essays that receive the highest grades are the ones that are well organized and well written, okay? And the foundation of all well-written essays are well-written paragraphs, okay? So we're going to be focusing on the paragraph. If you can master the paragraph, you can master the essay. There are 3 parts to a paragraph, okay? Just like how there are 3 parts to an essay. You have the introduction, you have the body paragraphs, you have the conclusion, that sort of thing. There are 3 parts to a paragraph. The first part, the main part, the first part, okay, this is your main idea. What comes first in a body paragraph is a main idea. The main idea that is being made in the paragraph. Everything in that paragraph should always be able to return back to the claim that's being made. The claim is your main idea. Claim, main idea. Main idea, claim. Everything in that paragraph should always be going back to the claim. Everything is that you write in a paragraph should be used to prove your claim. Okay? So if you don't have a claim, if you don't have one central idea, then you don't really have a paragraph. A claim to a paragraph is like a thesis to an essay. Okay? Every paragraph has one claim. What comes next is support. This is quotes and contextual support. You have to have support for your analysis. Okay? You can't just make a claim. You have to have some sort of support. This is either a quote from the text or it's other research that supports your ideas, okay? Now, the claim and the support added up should be half of your paragraph. 20% claim, 30% paragraph support should be half your paragraph. So then what comes next is the other half of your paragraph. And that's your analysis. The analysis portion of your paragraph is the most important, okay? That's where you really drive home your idea. It's 50% of your paragraph. Claim, support, analysis. Some people provide way too much support. They provide way too much, too many quotes, okay, and not enough analysis. Analysis is the most important part of your paragraph, okay? That's where the professor is convinced that you know what you're talking about, okay? 50% of the paragraph is analysis. Like I said, sometimes people overload their work with quotes, and they just want the quotes to do the work for them, okay? And they feel like, okay, well, if my reader just reads the quotes, they will understand the idea. It's not the case. You have to explain it. This is where your paragraph wins or loses. And if you want proof of this, the O.J. Simpson trial, okay? If you haven't watched the O.J. Simpson remake movie, it's on Netflix, I think. You should watch it, okay? Because the thing about it is that the prosecution, the O.J. Simpson trial, they felt that because they had so much evidence, they just had so much support for their claim that he was guilty. All right, they just left it out there for the juries to interpret themselves. Okay, the prosecution did not do a good enough job bringing home the analysis. They didn't show enough, verbally discuss enough how this evidence proves that he did it. The defense, they didn't have a lot of support to prove how he was not guilty. Okay, so what they did is that they put all their focus on the analysis of the prosecution's evidence. And what they did is that they broke it down. They changed the narrative. Okay, the majority of OJ's prosecution was evidence support, but the majority of his defense was analysis, and his defense won. Okay, so analysis, telling the reader, the viewer, how to interpret this information, that's how you win. All right, you can't just assume that your audience will get it just by seeing the evidence. You have to convince them, and that convincing is through analysis. High school bell, even though I have no kids here. Okay, so this is taking the base idea of your claim and extending it into an actual argument. Okay, so we're going to imagine that you read these two stories, okay? We're going to imagine that you read the story Earth on Turtle's Back, and I'm going to imagine that you read the chapter from The Never-Ending Story. Both stories contain a turtle, okay? So just play along. I'm providing you an analytical paragraph that compares and contrasts how the turtle is used in two different stories, okay? Just bear with me. We're going to read it, and then I'm going to show you highlights of the claim support analysis so you can see how it is organized, okay? Here we go. So the stories, Earth on Turtle's Back and The Never-Ending Story, both contain a turtle that is sought out to help with a current problem within the story. In Earth on Turtle's Back, the spirit god's wife falls through the hole in the sky and plummets into the ocean. In order to save her, the turtle sacrifices his shell to carry the solid earth so she would not drown. In contrast to the helpfulness of the turtle in that story, the turtle in The Never-Ending Story is the complete opposite. She is selfish, unhelpful, and pessimistic about helping to solve Fantastica's problems. She does not want to provide any support because everything is pointless. It all just happens again. These two depictions of the similar characters represent how age impacts our outlooks on life. The younger turtle is eager to help, volunteer, and be active, while the older turtle is reluctant to help or get involved in the problems of a world that seems to be behind her. Okay, so the way this looks. The claim is in yellow. The claim is the stories Earth on Turtle's Back and the Never-Ending Story both contain a turtle that is sought out to help with a current problem within the story. It's one sentence claim. Then we have support in green. In Earth on Turtle's Back, the spirit god's wife falls through the hole in the sky and plummets into the ocean. In order to save her, the turtle sacrifices his shell to carry the solid Earth so she would not drown. Okay, that's support in the line. She does not want to provide any support because everything is pointless. It just happens again. That is support. That's just a summary from the text. Okay, now everything in purple is me, the writer, trying to convince you. All right, I'm interpreting the story. Okay, which is why the word sacrifices is highlighted, because sacrifice is not used in this story. But to me, the turtle is sacrificing his shell, is helping, using his shell to help, right? So I throw in that word sacrifice to help the audience understand that what the turtle is doing is not just an action, it's an act of sacrifice. And then I also wrote, in contrast to the helpfulness of the turtle in that story, Turtle in the Never-Ending Story is the complete opposite. She is selfish, unhelpful, and pessimistic about helping solve Fantastica's problems. Those words, selfish, unhelpful, and pessimistic, those are not used in the story. Those are words that designate my interpretation of the story. I interpret her behavior as selfish. I interpret it as unhelpful. I interpret it as being pessimistic. Okay? And then I interpret the theme. These two depictions of the similar characters represents age, how age impacts outlooks on life. This is theme. This is the meaning of the story. The younger turtle is eager to help, volunteer, and be active, while the older turtle is reluctant to help or get involved in the problems. Okay, and so that's all interpretation. That's not in the story. That's me trying to build meaning from what the story has given me. Okay, if we count the lines, 1, 2. Okay, 2 lines of claim. 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4.5 of support. Okay, so that's about 6.5 lines total of claim and support. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines of analysis. Okay, so therefore half of this paragraph is analysis. It's interpretation, and that's what I'm looking for from your work. Is a claim, some evidence, and then interpretation. Okay. All right. So that's how your paragraphs should go. I don't need them highlighted. I should just be able to see claim, support, analysis. And when I grade your work, I might say things like, hey, this paragraph has way too much support and not enough analysis. And that's what I mean by that. Okay. Is that it should have more analysis, more interpretation than it is than support. All right. So let's talk about using quotes. Okay. Everything that you write in 1102 is based upon a story, something that you've read. Therefore, quotes are essential. So we have to understand how to use quotes, because I'm going to be taking points off of your work if you are misusing quotes. Okay. So first off, no drop quotes. A drop quote is when you have a quote that's a complete sentence and you don't have a signal phrase. I'm going to go over that more in a moment. A quote cannot be a sentence all its own. Okay, you have to have some of your own language in that sentence that accompanies a quote. For homework, if you are writing about a story we read, you do not have to cite the author's name. But if you quote research or you reference an outside source, then you have to cite the author's name from which that information came from. You can never have an assignment turned in with a source attached to it, but that source's name never appears behind any of the quotations. Okay, you have to cite the ideas of other people. Don't use more evidence than your own writing. That goes back to that previous. You cannot have more support than your analysis. Your analysis needs to be longer than your data. And whatever evidence you use, it should support your own ideas, okay? It should further your ideas. You are not relying on the support to prove your points, okay? That support is what it is. It's supporting your ideas. So always introduce quotations before they appear in your paper. No quotation should stand by itself as a separate sentence, okay? And here's what that looks like. Notice this. There's two sentences here. There are many examples of self-analysis in Plato's philosophy. Look at this period. And then we have a quotation mark. The unexamined life is not worth living. Quotation mark, citation, period. That's wrong because these should be combined. You cannot have a sentence. This is called a drop quote. This quote begins after a period and it goes and it ends with a period. This is a quote being used as a sentence, and you cannot do this in your academic papers. I don't care if you find this in books. I don't care if you see this in other articles. You cannot do this in academic papers. Bad example 2. Plato thinks people should analyze their own lives. Okay, and then the unexamined life is not worth living. Once again, same thing. Okay. We cannot have a quote by itself. Better example. Plato thinks people should analyze their own lives. Okay. You cannot have, and I think actually what's wrong with this example I want to show you is instead of a period here, this should be a comma. Sometimes people will try to introduce a quote. They'll do a complete sentence and then they'll have a comma. Okay, this is an incorrect use of a comma because you can't have a comma without a conjunction. Okay, because the unexamined life is not worth living. This is not a complete sentence. That's not a complete sentence. Which is why it cannot be by itself, and it cannot be just dropped in after a comma. It cannot be on its own. Now, a colon, this ... this serves as an introductory symbol. Okay, Plato thinks people should analyze their own lives. Colon, and then you have the quote. That is somewhat accepted. Okay, it's not the best, and if that's the only way you use to introduce a quote, then we'll have problems. If it's like one way you use to introduce a quote, that's all right. Okay, so changing a quote. Sometimes changing a quote is necessary to make the quote fit into your own writing. Okay, you might have to omit some words because maybe it's just too long and you want to get from the beginning part to the end part. Okay, use brackets to add words or phrases to make the meaning of a quote clearer to the reader. A quote might have a pronoun in it like it, and if the reader in your paper doesn't know what it means, you can use a bracket to replace it with the object that it actually represents. Instead of it, you can say the bug or the house. Example. Here's the original quote. Truss informs readers that Bill Gates has personally assured the Spanish Academy that he will never allow it to disappear from Microsoft word processing programs. Okay. Truss, so here's modified, okay. Truss informs readers that Bill Gates has personally assured the Spanish Academy that he will never allow the upside down question mark to disappear from Microsoft word processing programs. Okay, so we don't know what it originally. You don't know what it is, but this quote was taken from an article that was about the upside down question mark, which is a symbol used often in Spanish writing. Okay, so by taking the quote out of the original document where readers knew what it was and putting it into this academic paper where the readers of this paper might not know what it represented, you can use a bracket to then replace the word it with what it symbolizes, the upside down question mark. Same thing if you pulled a quote from a book, and in the book it said something like, Georgina looked at her and rolled her eyes and left the room. Well, people who are reading the novel know who she rolled her eyes at, but if I pulled that quote and put it in academic paper, I would need to replace her with a bracket that said her mother or her friend or whoever that person was. Always introduce quotations with a signal phrase before they appear in your paper. So look, you can't just have a quote by itself, okay? If you went through your paper and deleted every quote, okay, and your paper still makes total sense, then there's a problem. If you delete every quote and you read a paragraph and there are a bunch of fragments, like she said, then you know that you've integrated them correctly, okay? Because quotes should not just be able to disappear from your paper and your paper still makes sense. So you always have to say things like the author comments, the author describes, the author explains, the author relates, the author points out, the author thinks, the author writes, the author analyzes. Abram X. Kennedy shows, Kennedy speculates, Kennedy insists, and Kennedy maintains. Okay, we got to have some sort of verb before a quote. Verbs before quotes, people. Okay? So like when you're answering questions for the homework this week, okay? Always write in third person. Don't write, well, I think my interpretation is. No, just write third person, okay? No first person. Don't begin with statements like, in my opinion, or I think, okay? Third person. Always write in present tense, unless when talking about something that happened in the past within the story. If it's in the past in the story, it's okay. But if the story you're reading, whatever event is currently happening in that moment, it needs to be written as present tense in your paper. So when Janine sees the guard, she hopes to get his attention. Don't write, when Janine saw the guard, she hoped to get his attention. Okay? Because if I open up that book right now and I'm reading it, it's happening right now. Okay? So, no past tense, all present tense. So like, for example, okay, here's a frame for a question. You're not answering this question, okay? I'm just giving you an example. Let's say the question was, what is Miss Mallard's social class? What clues lead you to this conclusion? You'd write something like, after reading the story of an hour, one can assume that Miss Mallard belongs to the upper class position of society. This can be inferred when Kate Chopin describes Miss Mallard's blank, 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 blank. Only people of that class would have blank and blank. Most people had to blank, 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 blank. Okay? I should clearly see three parts of your paragraph. I should see your claim, your support from the text, and then your analysis. And the analysis should be 50% of your paragraph. Okay? All right, so look. Make sure you are reading a contemporary novel. Okay? Essay 3 is over a contemporary novel or play. Okay, something written in the last 5 years. Fill out the Google form that is attached to today's announcements. I'll show you that. So look, go to announcements. This is going to be posted in a moment. By the time this video is up, it'll be posted. And there is this form right here. Okay, click on the form. It's going to take you here. English 1102 book choice for Essay 3. Essay 3 is over a contemporary novel. Okay, and a novel is not a nonfiction book. I mean, it's nonfiction. It can be nonfiction, but it has to be a narrative. It has to tell a story. Okay, so like, for example, You could read Born a Crime. This is a memoir. It is nonfiction, but it's a narrative. It tells Trevor Noah's story, all right, about him, about his life growing up in Africa and in apartheid. Okay, that book you can read. Stamped from the Beginning. You cannot read. This is a great book. I love this book. This is a beautiful book. Okay, it was written in 2016. Okay, so it matches the date. But this book is not a narrative. It's a history book. All these different chapters about different people, different things. You cannot read this book because it is outside of the requirements. It does not tell a story, even though it's within 2016. Okay, you cannot read that book. The House on Mango Street. Okay, this tells the story of this girl's life, this Mexican-American girl growing up in Chicago on Mango Street. Okay, it's a narrative. It's fiction, tells a story, but this was written in 1984. Can't read this book. Nope. So, like you have to make sure that you find correct books, okay, that are written in a time that are current, and it tells a story of someone's life, okay. It tells of an adventure that happens, something that occurs. As long as it can be fantasy, it can be mystery, it can be a scary novel, it can be a brand new book. I read Stephen King's If It Bleeds, and that was published this year. You can read that. The Outsider. Oh, The Outsider is a great book. The Outsider by Stephen King. This was written in 2018. It's paperback now at Target. Great book, really engaging. Okay, you can read this book because it's fiction. It tells a story though. It's a narrative. All right, and it was published in 2018. So you need a book. So you're going to fill out this form when you get a book. What is the title of the author of the book? What year was the book published? What is the book about? Ooh, you know what? Though? I need to include one more question. And that is, what is your name? First and last. Okay. So you're going to answer, what is your name? And then you're going to answer, what is the title and author of the book? The Outsider, Stephen King. What year is the book published? 2018. What is the book about? It's about a guy who's accused of brutally murdering this little kid, but he has an alibi and evidence that he was someplace else when the murder took place. So, how can it be? How can someone be in two places at once? Ooh, okay. Murder mystery, possibly supernatural. All right. So fill that out. That's posted in announcements. Zoom. We're going to have Zoom lectures on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. It's live recordings on Wednesdays. They're not mandatory, okay? They'll be used to provide discussion over the readings, provide more explanation on our topics of study, and answer your questions. I'll record every Zoom meeting, and I'll post the recording so you can watch it. Okay? All right. If you all have any questions, feel free to, don't be shy, email me, let me know how I can help you. Okay? And that's about that. I'll see y'all later. I'm going to start grading this week. You'll have grades up soon. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.